Welcome to this quick little overview how to use Export to Hype for Illustrator. We got this nice file from Kalle, and one of my power users. He made this file for depositing CO2 into ground. It's an infographic for print that has to be converted to a web graphic. So let's open this in Illustrator. So first thing we have to inspect is that this is set to millimeters. You can set it to pixels, and if you look at rulers now, you will see that this file has only a dimension of 311 pixels by 311 pixels, pretty small. Just a side note that you create your files in the size you need them, but you can also scale them later in Hype if you want. This file will be exported as two SVGs because this exporter uses all the top level layers and exports them as SVGs and links them to rectangles on the stage in Hype. So you have to prepare your layer structure. In this case, I would probably just convert all the contained groups into layers, drag those layers out to the top level. This tool doesn't export nested layers. It just exports top-level layers and contained groups. Now we have our file prepared. I did that already, so let me close this and open my AI file. It's all the same. Go for a first export. This is the interface. Click on Export and leave the default settings. While this is running in the background, you see some flashing layers, and it's going through the layers one by one, exporting them each as an SVG. And it's creating a Hype template. Up here you can see that setting. You can also create a Hype symbol or only export the resources if you want to relink them later. Pick your options. I constructed the options as a sentence. Export visible top level layers in linked mode and render the fonts as outline path, flattened. That means that we only export the visible layers. Linked mode means that we are linking the rectangles created in Hype with the exported SVG files. And rendering the fonts as outline path means we are breaking down the fonts into path information. We are done. Now let's go over to our export folder. You see we have a new file here. It's in Hype template. If you double click a Hype template, it opens a new Hype instance. You also can see that we have reduced the size of this EPS AI file, so it's not that big anymore. The export is going to be even smaller. So what you can see now, what we have done is we have created Hype template file. We have our layers over here. We have our resources. I would suggest picking good names. You can also see that all the sizes of those layers are pretty small. The B stands for bytes. The layers that have kilobytes and are a bit bigger are mostly the layers that contain text. Text layer here is this one up here, and it has a lot of text that has been broken down into path information. It's still overall pretty small. Let's close this. Let's go back and export again, but this time I will be hiding all the layers so you don't have to wait. We have this text left here. Let's scale that up a bit. Proportionally. Reposition. Okay, so this is the text we're left. We're going to export the two visible layers. And now we can go to this exporter again. We're going to choose the inline mode this time. Render the font as outline path. It's much quicker now because we only have 2 layers, that's it. One other side note is that it always overrides the same Hype template. If you have one type template you want to keep, just duplicate it, then you have a copy. Now this is the new Hype template, and if you look at the resources, you will see there is no SVGs in here because we chose to inline the information. So if you look inside of one of those rectangles, you see that the entire SVG is included, and you see that all the text is being rendered to path information. This can also be changed, this behavior. We can go to Export to Hype Illustrator, and now we can choose to export using a web font. We will export the text as a SVG, but we won't render the fonts into path information. We will keep the font editable. One thing that happens when you do this is that even if you put the mode here to linked, those layers containing the web fonts will be inlined automatically because there is a sandbox setting in browsers that doesn't allow to load web fonts into SVG if it's used as a background image. Let's export using a web font. Done. Let's reopen the template. So it looks virtually the same. You can go into what you already see, you can mark the text, and if you go into HTML, you will see that you have all the text here and you can change the text. Another thing you can see is that font name picked by Illustrator doesn't really match. The font name has mapped from Illustrator to the PostScript name. You could work with it, but usually when you download Google Fonts, this won't be the name you have to map to. So there is a little option to map fonts in the tool. So let's export again. We have a font mapper now here, and there's all the fonts used in the document. Only look at the Roboto font, the one visible here. Let's map it to Roboto. The moment you map, you see we have a mapping. And just let's copy this and go to the bold version and also map it to Roboto, and we have the bold setting here. So now these 2 fonts mapped. Now we apply the settings and now export again. You'll see it looks virtually the same again, but if you go inside, you will see we have now the mapping to Roboto, and we have the font settings like the font weight in here instead of in the name. Now you can just go to the resources panel and install the font needed. Because if you don't do that and you just go to the preview, you will see the font is not loaded and therefore you get display errors. Let's install the font. You can also just copy paste those 2 layers into existing document that has already a font installed. Let's do it from scratch. Let's go to the add font. Then we choose the Roboto font. And we have to install default, that's regular. And then we install the bold version. And now, when you export this, you will see it's all mapped and ready to go. Let's head over back to our file and export again, because I want to show you another option to conclude this video. There are more options we're going to cover in an advanced video, but one option I still want to highlight is the export as native Hype text. When if you choose this one, the font mapping applies here too. You click export, and now you head over to your export file. Looks again the same, but if you click inside the inner HTML, you will see that there is no markup anymore because it's just plain text, and the whole styling information is done through the styling panel here. You will see if you click on the font, you don't see the mapping here because the font is a Roboto and is not actually installed yet. So let's do that again. Every time you open a template, you create a new file. So this one hasn't been processed. One default, and 1 bold. There we go. If you click on the fonts now, you'll see they're correctly mapped. This concludes this introduction video into how to use the exporter, how to handle fonts. See you in the advanced video. I hope this helps.